Tsarevich begged his father to relieve him from the burden of succession.
I do not think myself fit for government. My memory is weak, my body decayed. I do not aspire to the Russian crown.
While Alexei failed to meet Peter's high expectations, the Tsar had already found someone else who did, a buxom Lithuanian peasant girl, Marfa Skafronska.
She starts life really as a sort of camp follower. She was a beautiful young woman, and one of the Russian generals took a fancy to her. The story then goes that Peter then caught sight of her, and he, of course, as the Tsar, could have anything he wanted, and that he then took her.
As Marfa evolved into the Tsar's closest confidant, the camp follower acquired a respectable society name, Ekaterina, Catherine.
She was the helpmate that he needed. She went with him to battles. She comforted him when he got angry. She produced children for him and gave him the love and the warmth that I think he had been denied probably as a child.
Peter and his peasant queen married first in secret. Later they remarried before the court. In time, Peter would even crown her Empress of Russia. And in 1715, Catherine gave Peter what he craved most, a new male heir. The birth of a baby half-brother complicated life for Peter's first son, the 25-year-old Tsarevich, Alexei. As the gulf between the Tsar and his heir widened, Peter issued an ultimatum.
I cannot resolve to let you live on according to your own will. Either strive to render yourself worthy of the succession or become a monk.
Tsar Peter prepared to imprison his son in a monastery. Desperate to live free of his overbearing father, Alexei escaped to the west. But Alexei's sudden flight only helped to convince Peter that his son was part of a plot against the Russian crown. The Tsar's spies tracked Alexei to Austria and lured the Tsarevich back to Russia and doom. Behind the stone walls of St. Petersburg's island fortress, Alexei faced his father's wrathful inquisition.
He was almost immediately confronted with an ultimatum that unless he divulged all his accomplices, he would not get his pardon.
Treason, conspiracy. The Tsarevich confessed to every offense his father could imagine. Alexei named names and accomplices.
You believe that Alexei probably was part of a conspiracy against him. And to find out the truth, he had Alexei tortured with a knout, which is a thick leather whip that it just shreds through skin. And 15 to 25 lashes with the knout were considered standard. Anything over that would cause death. And on the first day alone, Alexei got 25 lashes.
The Tsar showed no tolerance for even the possibility of counter-reform. He sentenced his son to be beaten for 2 brutal days. June 1718. Alexei Petrovich Romanov died behind the fortress walls, condemned to death by his own father, the Tsar.
I honestly don't believe that ultimately Peter wanted Alexis dead. He wanted him alive and being the Alexis which Peter wanted, but which is what Alexis couldn't be.
Barely a year later, the wheel of fate turned on Peter. His young son, Pyotr, the child of his beloved Catherine, died. The Russian Empire now had no male heir, and for Russia's first official emperor, time was running short. On a cold November day in 1724, Peter spotted a vessel foundering in the Baltic. Hands on to the very end, Peter waded into the freezing waters to save the sailors. Soon after, the Tsar fell sick. As he lay dying in January of 1725, Peter took pen and paper and prepared to write his will. In a single generation, Peter the Great had remade Russia. He had transformed his ancient land from an isolated kingdom into a modern global power, the goal a headstrong young man had set some 30 years before.
Peter introduced so much that was new, but in particular, he ended the xenophobia and the religiosity of the old Muscovite way of life, and he ended the isolation of Russia as a country. And I think this is terribly important. He introduced a whole new style of statecraft. Peter saw himself not as being a religious keeper of the status quo, which the Muscovite Tsars were, but as being a secular, hard-working, reforming Tsar capable of creating through force and fiat. And I think these were the ways in which Peter demonstrated himself to be a real revolutionary.
Now, on the brink of death, one last task remained. Peter still had to name an heir to his empire. Yet of 15 children by 2 wives, only 2 daughters survived. On a piece of paper he wrote, "Give it all to..." He died without finishing the sentence, without naming an heir.
I think ultimately, though, the reason that Peter didn't choose was he perhaps thought that he was immortal. He didn't expect to die as soon as he did. He thought he still had time. He left it too late.
The giant of the Romanov dynasty had stumbled and left the greatest empire on earth without a ruler. Winter and doubt gripped Russia. Spring could be foretold, but Russia's future was unknown.